Hey everybody, Jay Schlansky here from the Fifth Trooper Network. I just want to take a moment to thank you for checking out this show. Did you know that over at thefifthtrooper.com we have tons of other content, including blogs, other podcasts, all kinds of stuff. In addition, if you want access to exclusive content, you can join us on patreon.com/thefifthtrooper and join at any level and you'll get access to exclusive blog articles, access to our private Discord, and much more. So please check us out, and thank you so much for all your support.
Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Mike. What's up?
Hey. It's Monday for those of you that love us when we say that.
Yep.
And here we are. We're getting new units this week. I should say new unit probably is more apt description.
In practical terms. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the Rebel Sleeper Cell being released alongside a much worse expansion, the Imperial Riot Troopers. I was trying to think of a good joke, and it just wasn't there.
No.
But yeah, I'll be buying Sleeper Cell. I don't know who's going to be buying Riot Troopers, but it's not this guy. Sorry,
I mean, when they come down 30 points, maybe.
Yeah, maybe eventually. I'm sure by then that there will be some on eBay or Amazon or whatever that are not full price. That.
Oh yeah. No, stores are they're gonna get a bunch of these and they're gonna stay in stock.
Yeah, I feel bad for the stores that are like buying equal amounts of Sleeper Cell and Riot Troopers and just stocking them both like they're, which is probably what mostly happens. I mean, I don't know how stores make stocking decisions, but
I mean, hopefully they're communicating with their players, but also there's a lot more Empire players than Rebel players, I think.
That's true.
So I guess we'll see.
I guess we'll see. And there are people that just buy everything that comes out, which is fine. But I collect 4 factions. But I can't afford to do that anymore.
Yeah. I'm also off that train.
Yeah, it's a painting thing as much as it is a money thing because I still have stuff that is in my pile of shame that I just haven't got to. I have stuff in boxes that I haven't opened yet.
The worst part is I have like 4 or 5 unopened phase 2 clone boxes. But since the update, I technically have enough clones to field six of the new clone infantry. So I don't know what I'm ever gonna do with them.
Yeah.
Before they served a purpose.
If they're unopened, put them up on eBay.
Oh, they're in shrink wrap. Yeah.
Yeah, put them on eBay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing with some of I got some stuff too that kind of got obviated with the new edition that I'm just like, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna, as much as I would like to paint this just for the sake of painting it, I have stuff that I actually want to use that I still haven't painted. So I still have Bad Batch in the shrink wrap, and I'm definitely using them.
Yeah. No, they're halfway through being painted right now. They got pushed to the side for my Mordor orcs. So
that's entirely fair. Yeah, detours.
Yep. I'm a slow painter as it is, so
Yeah, I tend to go in spurts. I will go for long periods of time without painting anything, and then usually it's before a tournament where I need something, right? And then I'll paint like 40 miniatures in a 3-week time period, basically.
Yeah. I generally am the same. I've definitely been like, okay, let's like pump out like a squad a month or something, let's just kind of like make it at least regular. I don't tear down my painting station anymore, so
yeah, I don't either. I have all my paints like right here underneath my monitor still.
Yeah. Painting's like a crime of opportunity,
Yes.
You got to set yourself up for success.
Or you just if you can just sit down and be like, you know what, I'm gonna paint for 10 minutes.
Yeah. Like
exactly.
do a couple layers or whatever, and you're like, okay, all right, fine.
Yeah.
And then over the course of doing that a few times, you finish a couple models or whatever.
Yeah, I've been getting kind of lazy, unfortunately, with my methods. I have been painting droids, which you can sort of afford to, but I've been doing almost exclusively like airbrush and then washes and dry brushes and stuff.
Hmm.
And I think it looks decent enough with all that. But if I'm going back to Rebels, which I think ultimately what I'd like to do, starting with Sleeper Cell, is kind of just since the whole range is getting a refresh, just kind of start over with Rebels.
Oh, sure. Your rebels look good, man. Those air speeders that are they're not so good anymore, but
Well, the minute the unit is not great. The air speeders look pretty good. But that's not something that's getting replaced. So I'm still gonna just use those, and I'm probably just gonna rebase them if I end up changing the scheme.
sure, 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 sure.
Yeah, I'm proud of my Rebel vehicles.
You should be.
I did some weathering and stuff on those. The ATRTs look uh similar to the air speeders. So those are not getting replaced. But
It's a good thing you got ATRTs. We're gonna talk about them today too.
we are,
Mm-mm-mm.
and they're gonna be higher than they have been in previous versions of this ranking, probably.
Ever, ever.
Ever. I don't know about ever. I mean, when the
I feel
game
calm.
first started, they were not only actually good, but they were like your only support choice.
The only choice.
They were one of like three units you could field, basically.
S,
So,
S by default.
right. Yeah. Yeah. You literally had to include them or you could not get to 800 points.
Yeah, that's fair.
Uh, so yeah, I don't know about ever, but definitely like since the first year of the game, I would say.
Sure, sure.
Um, yeah, I won my very first invite with ATRTs back when, it was like high command, I think was the first year
Yes.
that they had things. Yeah, I won
Yep,
my high
yep.
command invite with ATRTs in my list. So yeah, anyway, that's a long way of saying I think what I want to do with my rebels is actually do like a jungle camouflage
Okay.
scheme. And unless I can find a fast and easy way to do that with an airbrush, which who knows, I might be able to because they do make stencils, stuff like that.
Sure.
Um, but it's not going to be a situation where I can like if I want to, do Adepticon in March and bring rebels, I'm not going to be able to just procrastinate until a month before the tournament and then paint up a bunch of rebel units with camouflage. So
That's
I don't know.
fair. Yeah. Uh I am on the Adepticon subject. I'm very excited that it seems like that's kind of being like a thing again.
With them adding buys for next year
Yeah,
to
yeah.
yeah.
It feels like it's like I don't know.
Uh,
I'm very happy about that.
Yes, and I'm even though like the 2025 Adepticon is not, utilizing that because that's the culmination of the season that's happening now. It still has me more excited about that one as well because
Yeah,
it's kind of
that's sort of what I mean.
yeah,
I was kind of like, oh man, I was just gonna go by the wayside sort of situation, like over time. But the fact that it's kind of being reinforced feels good to me.
yeah, agreed. All right, how about we just dive into these support rankings here? People have really been liking. We've been getting tons of positive comments about the tier rankings. So here you go. Here's another tier ranking. We're gonna do support today.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think as long as we're talking about tier rankings and people liking them and stuff, this is really more here to open up a conversation about these units as
Yeah.
opposed to be like the end all be all of these units.
Yeah, it's more of like a good way to structure talking about the units themselves.
Yeah,
It's sort of a the means justify the ends, if you will, or the journey. It's more about the journey than the destination. That's a better
sure,
analogy.
sure.
Yeah. So
It's like it's all about taking the ring to Mordor, you know.
right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's why Fellowship's the best movie. Moving on. Uh, let's talk about Range Troopers.
Yep.
The I guess newest addition to the Imperial support roster.
Yeah.
Um, man, I'm gonna be legit. I have been really unimpressed with these guys in the new edition. They're kind of slow. Obviously, they can spur. Um, and the range four just matters so much less
Yeah.
is the main thing. Like they were already kind of like a little bit lackluster in the old edition, I think. but
They were fine.
they were yeah, I would say they were like they felt like they should have been more special than they were, I guess is kind of how I was feeling before the change. And now I'm like every time I have put them in my list, I have actively regretted it.
Yeah, I feel like range troopers, if there was an award for unit that seems like it should be better than it is,
Yes, yeah,
the
yeah.
most, I think it's range troopers.
Um,
Like on paper, it's a very efficient long range threat. But when you actually just put it on the table, they're really underwhelming. Like you said, they have trouble getting places that they need to go because it also kind of feels like a waste to double move them on any given
hmm
turn,
hmm
which you'll be doing with other units that are like shorter ranged or you know are cheaper. Uh, and so that you're move shooting with them, which means now that you have to be like on a point on turn two. These guys probably are not on a point on turn two. They don't have a gear slot for scout. Empire doesn't really have a way to give them scout.
No, I
Um,
mean, they just don't at all.
yeah, so you're moving them from the edge, trudging them on from the edge at speed two with spur. You're probably taking maybe you're taking a shot with them the first turn, maybe you're not. But even if you're not, they still can't really get where they need to be with just three speed two moves, typically. Um,
Yeah, and the other
so
thing is that if you're spurring, the chances that they're suppressed, I don't know. They go up.
yeah,
They've got Indomitable,
they do have
obviously, but
Indomitable.
I don't know.
Notably, though,
Um,
that happens at the beginning of their turn, right?
yes,
So the situation, because of how scoring works now, like if you double spur to get on a point and score with them, you're starting with two suppression, and then
yes, yeah,
all your opponent has to do is add two more suppression, and then suddenly they're not a scoring unit, and then their indomitable doesn't help them at all there.
no,
So yeah, I think it's just the range four matters a lot less. They still really their biggest problem, like when I've used them, is just that they are super surge hungry.
they're extremely search hungry. Yeah,
And Empire does not have a good way to get surges to these guys.
it's pretty much aggressive tactics and like exemplar is kind of,
Yeah.
you know,
And guidance, I guess.
like force guidance.
Force guidance, yeah.
Yeah, it's awkward with Palp, right? Because he
Yeah.
almost I think he generally would be rather like pulling the strings on things that are a little bit more reliable. I think that's one of the things with range troopers that gets me the most is that like the offensive pool on them, just like if you're looking for a range four threat that is reliable, you should probably still take DTs, I think.
Yeah. And if you don't care about the range four, then you should just take like storms for
Yeah,
20
like
fewer points.
anything else.
Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah. I will say there is a little bit of something to the fact that they're suppressive.
if you
You know,
take the suppressive gun,
if you
yes.
take the
Yeah.
suppressive gun, that's a
Uh,
little more relevant now. And especially if you combine them with other stuff in your list that's suppressive, then maybe you can make a list out of that. Like if you're going to make a suppressive empire list, you probably need to be using range troopers with the suppressive gun.
mm,
Or that's definitely like the way to get up to your maximum suppression count, right?
I wanna kick in on that for a second, but I wanna rank these guys before we do because it's gonna tie in.
Okay.
Um, we thinking do range troopers fit into like average or below average? Do you?
I would say average.
Okay. I would say I would like to put them in low B tier,
Yeah,
I
that's
think.
fair. I would have said B minus.
Yeah. Um, but on the suppression conversation, let's talk
Yep.
about the E-Web Heavy Blaster, which is now range 4
Yes.
and has prepared positions. Um,
Arguably liability, but yes.
yeah, no doubt. I definitely think like for its cost, um, uh, I have been kind of impressed with the E-Webs, frankly, at least in comparison to what they used to be.
Oh, sure. Totally.
Um, and they're also pretty. pretty cheap. They're significantly cheaper than the range troopers. And I think Empire is kind of in that space where it's like lots of cheap and good units is still, I think, kind of the name of the game.
Yeah, that's the thing you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You stick a barrage generator on this guy and he's throwing seven dice at range 4. Um,
Yeah, for significantly cheaper than a range trooper.
for significantly cheaper than a range trooper, it's like 63 points. And I think Empire more than Rebels has like a pretty good backbone of like, okay, we're gonna prepare positions these guys, but if you want to step up and shoot them, we do have a bunch of like um kind of built-in range 4 options that can smack you back pretty quickly. Like you're like, all right, all my stormtroopers have DLTs. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you want to step up and smack my, range 4 EWEB like early on in the turn, like you're gonna take 10 DLT red dice to the face in addition to, that you wouldn't normally. Um
Yeah, you could also make them part of a list where just basically your entire list has prepared positions.
yeah.
Just take a bunch of shores with E-Webs and Vader.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's just like, okay, your list is on the table. Good.
Right. Yeah. I'm not
Um,
sure if that'd be good, but it's a thing you could do.
it is. It is. I definitely I've included a couple token E-Webs in my Empire lists since the update. They have in stark contrast to the range troopers, they have been better than I have expected them to be every time. Um I'm not sure that that means that they're good, to be clear, but I do think that they are. I would take an E-Web over a range trooper basically every time. It's worth noting that they also don't like deteriorate in effectiveness when they take wounds,
Right.
which is also a big deal.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, I'd probably put him at like a B plus.
yeah, I think so too. All right. Let's talk about Dewback riders. I think Dewback riders are good,
Yeah, they're great.
particularly with the flamethrower.
I would say they're great, actually.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I
They're
think. Go ahead.
they're the exact kind of unit you want with the new edition.
Yes.
They can relocate and get around very quickly. They don't deteriorate in effectiveness,
Mm-hmm.
as you just noted, and they have very good close range weapons
Yeah, for pretty cheap too. What
for a
is
reasonable cost.
what's the flamer? The flamer's 10 points, so due back it's what 80 before you throw a com or training on it. Um and I'm not sure you need to do either of those things, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm willing to put the dewback, I think, in high A tier, unless you want to have a conversation around whether it should be S or not.
I don't think I would put it in S,
Okay.
but I would definitely say like top of A tier.
Yeah. I definitely think it is unlikely to be usurped by much else on this list.
Yeah.
Um, oh man, the 74Z speeder bikes. How the mighty have fallen, guys.
Yeah, I'm looking over here right now at my 4 very nicely painted speeder bikes from Blizzard Force. They did me proud. I have some great times with those speeder bikes, but they've been on that shelf for a while, and I think they're going to stay there for a while. I mean, not being able to get cover from terrain, coupled with the new cover rules. I mean, light cover is practically worthless in the new cover rules.
It is very close to meaning nothing most of the time. Don't get me wrong. There are going to be some times when like your opponent or you are going to god roll some, like, everybody's rolled that, like, 6 save B1 roll once in their Legion career, and it's felt like you stole something from the gods, but 98% of the time it's gonna not do anything.
Yeah, and the fact that everything is so much closer now, and they're less. I know that their cost increased because they can score every objective now, but I actually think
So I actually don't think that's why the cost went up.
okay.
I think the cost went up because the across the board on all the speeders, because they can sort of steal points out from under people's noses with the 3 moves.
Sure, right. But I guess the point is that's an objective related cost increase.
It is. I guess the fact that they can score all of the objectives, I think, is sort of
Yeah.
whatever.
Um, I think that they are arguably, at best, kind of a side grade from their previous usefulness on objectives, simply because, having played Blizzard Force into the ground when that was a thing, the old speeders allowed you to skew. And you could like, there were objectives that speeders were just not only good at, but like great at.
And
And
with the way the displacement rules worked, like you could really steal some things.
yeah. And between the increased fragility and the fact that, that I feel like when on the objectives that speeder bikes were good at in Legacy Legion, they were really, really good at. And now they're
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like a little better than troopers at most objectives. Arguably worse because they're less durable for their cost. And there are a lot of objectives that are basically slugfests now. So, yeah, I don't know. The cost increase to me is, I know it's an objective focused cost increase. I don't think it's warranted because I think they're at best the same and then arguably worse.
Yeah, I mean, I also think their offensive pool is just hot garbage now. It is consistent, which is what it's kind of always been.
Right.
But like, it was consistently put in like, 2 to 3 pass cover a lot of the time. Particularly if they had a name token, which was
Well, and you
nice.
could often flank to deny cover.
Yeah, absolutely. But like now, most of the time, like nobody's really got cover, and even if they did, it's like I don't know. They're maybe only shaving one off the pool, anyways. So, and most core units are probably putting more damage past cover than this unit, anyways.
Right. Even if you account for things like flanking.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know. Definitely not worth 80 points.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm
I
tempted. I'm tempted to make these things D tier.
I think they're hot garbage.
Okay.
Like straight, like it's laughable how bad they are. Frankly. If my opponent puts speeder bikes on the table, I'm like, yeah.
All right.
Commando target number 1.
Yep.
Like so. Okay. Moving on to Rebels, Tauntaun Riders.
Yeah. I feel like in theory these should occupy this a similar spot to dues, but they really don't because they're way more expensive.
It
The
feels like
fact,
they got the speeder bike treatment a little bit. I mean, they were already sort of fringe, but it feels
yeah,
like their cost went up again because they're so fast.
yes. No, they are definitely more durable than speeder bikes, which is good. But
Yes.
yeah, and their offense. I mean, the pistols thing, the double pistol shot is. It was always kind of in that category of like surprisingly reliable.
Yep.
But your ceiling is 4 hits on that shot. If you compare them to like a Dewback flamer, that's wildly
Nothing.
different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. I, I don't know. I think they're just too expensive for what
I
they're offering.
agree. I definitely think that, yeah, they're definitely too expensive, but I do think they're better than speeder bikes.
Oh, they're way better than speeder bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd say like C plus.
okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I don't, yeah. Okay. I guess I've got swoops on here like 4 times because it's in so many factions, and I
Yeah.
just like downloaded all the things like So this is the first iteration of swoop bikes, but
Okay.
I think we can talk about it uh, kind of universally. It's really only played in mercenary factions for the most part.
Yeah, I think I would personally struggle to find a use case for swoops outside of Shadow Collective.
Well, so here's the thing.
I think maybe Rebels.
Yes, I think Republic obviously we'll get to Republic. Um,
Yeah.
but I do think the swoop bike, for whatever reason, I don't know if did the cost ever go below the printed cost on the card? Because it is the printed cost on the card
Yeah,
now.
it was 65, I think.
Okay. I do think 70 points for a speeder bike unit is like we're now entering the territory of what I might be willing to pay for something that can like run around the edge of the board and steal a point.
Yep.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure 70 is like there yet, but it's definitely I'm starting to think about it. Also, uh reinforcements is really good.
Yes, as is independent aim 1 dodge 1.
Yeah.
And since
Um
everything is so close now, them getting their full dice on target is a lot easier than it used to be. Previously, it's like, oh, it's a range 2 slash overrun slash melee ranged speeder bike. That like that's terrible. They're just gonna die.
Yep,
But
yeah, yeah.
everything's at that range now anyway. So
Yeah, it's wild because these guys can output like significantly more damage than the Imperial speeder bikes. uh
I mean,
and
yeah, they can throw 10 dice in a turn
yes, yeah.
in theory if you get
Um
your overruns
of which
on
four
target.
are red, right? So
Yes,
like um the floor is way higher.
right.
Um yeah, I don't know. I think they're much better than the speeder bikes. I'm not sure that that's like good enough to get them out of C tier.
Yeah, I'd say
um
C plus B minus somewhere in there.
Okay, okay. I'm willing to put them at a B minus. I think they were probably underrating these a little, but
Okay.
okay. Kicking back to Rebels, ATRTs. We talked about these a little bit already today.
Yeah, and we've talked about them. At our in the past month or so, we've been focusing a lot on kind of trying to make things out of rebels.
Yeah.
And I feel like ATRTs are a staple of rebel lists now again, or should be. They're
Yeah.
they're super cheap. They're reasonably durable now, right? They got surge on their save.
hmm
Um,
For whatever reason, Armor 2 feels better than old armor. I know that that's like objectively not
Objectively
not
false. Yeah.
true. But
I think it's because in a lot of situations, armor 2 is almost as good as full armor anyway. And then they got the surging save, and there's so much. I mean, they're really cheap. It's 60 or 65 points to put a gun on these things.
yeah, it
And
definitely feels like if your opponent is shooting at your ATRTs, you're like, oh, thank God you're not shooting my trooper units.
right,
And,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
then you're shaving two off the top, and it's just like before it was like, oh, they're shooting my ATRT, like, they yeah, whatever. Now
Yeah.
it's like, oh, please God, shoot my ATRT.
Yeah, they can also, with a free reposition basically being part of ground vehicle moves now, they can get around a lot easier. You don't have to worry about displacing your own dudes when you walk over them. So they're
Uh,
they're just so much easier to use.
their melee profile is also significantly more relevant.
Yes.
Um, the amount of people I've clawed in the face with those grappling claws in the new game is high.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I think they're pretty good. I'd I'd,
yeah,
I'd put them in A tier, honestly. Not in Dewback territory, but definitely below Dewbacks.
yeah, they're definitely like A minus B
Yep.
plus range, I think,
Yep.
for sure. 1.4 FD laser cannon team.
Oh, man, stationary is
So it turns out that when you build a new game mode where everything has to be super mobile, Units that can't move are not great.
Yeah, I'm of two minds on this. The fact that they're literally never scoring.
That's not true.
Okay, it's sorry, almost never scoring.
They're actually that might be true. They're at least they can contest things sometimes, but generally the things that they contest you can't also score.
Right.
Generally, I'm sure that there's probably like one objective, like shifting priorities, like they could in theory like score something that gets moved into your zone or something, but
In theory.
yeah.
So almost never scoring. I think that's offset a little bit by two factors, which is one, you know exactly, like you know that they're going to be able to shoot stuff.
Mhm.
With Legacy Legion, with the extremely high variability in deployments and objectives combinations, there were definitely some situations, among those 64 possible iterations where your FD would just not be able to do anything.
Sure. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Now that there's only six and they're all kind of similar, and they're all battle lines, you know that your FD, even though it's not going to move, you can kind of put it like in an area that's right next to a POI and it's going to be useful.
Sure.
At least as far as shooting stuff is concerned. So there's that, right? It's less vulnerable to being completely screwed by like a bad combination on the
On the
deployment
deployment.
objective. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that this unit is probably functionally has a problem based on the faction that it lies in. Because I actually, as you say that, like I actually am like, okay, this unit might be okay in Empire, or
Yeah.
like this unit would be kind of like Commandos sort of do that sometimes. What you're describing, right?
Right.
Um, it could be okay in Republic, but I think Rebels because they die so fast. Like you can't start the game -1 on your activation count for things that can contest the points because your whole game plan has to be swarm the point with as many things as possible because all of my stuff's gonna die and it's all got to be there so that I don't get screwed when my stuff dies, right? Like
Yeah.
that's and for every FD you take, it's like one unit less that you can do that with.
Right. Exactly. And they're not particularly cheap for a unit that is literally never going to be able to score.
No, yeah. They certainly didn't get the like reverse speeder bike treatment.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Yeah. I'd put them in C, probably below Tauntauns. But they're
okay,
not as bad as Empire speeder bikes, so I think we have to keep them in C.
that's fair. I definitely was like low C, high D.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that that's a fair assessment. Um, moving on to separatists. Uh, we're gonna talk
Stabs.
about yeah, Kyle's
Man, I
pet
love
unit here.
stabs. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
I uh, they're so bad now. I don't know, like, I mean, everything we said about the Empire speeder bikes applies to stabs, except that the stabs are even more expensive. Um, and one of the things that previously was one of their biggest strengths, which is the fact that, they're essentially support B1s with coordinate, and you could use them to, as like a key part of your managing AI strategy
yep.
and a reverse sort, by which we mean having most of, if not all of your tokens face up, except, one type of token in your bag. The fact that that's like so much less relevant now, and like,
And harder to do.
yes, and harder to do. I, I mean, why would I take stabs? Uh,
Yeah. Uh,
and even in Legacy Legion, they were super fragile for their cost, and now they're just like
Yeah.
They immediately die. Uh,
There's no holding them back in this version
mm-mm.
either. You don't really like. It's like, okay, well, um,
Yeah, running speeder bikes used to be the sort of thing where you'd kind of like wheel in, take a shot, wheel out, wheel in, take a shot, wheel out. But that's just you just can't do that anymore.
no.
It's not sustainable. So yeah, Staps. I'd actually put them below the Empire speeder bikes personally.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a toss up for me. I actually think Staps are probably better than the speeder bikes, but I think they're both so garbage that I mean, like, I almost feel like we need to make like an F tier for both of
The
them.
speeder bike tier.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like these are terrible. It's not gonna be terrible though.
crab droids.
Crab droids. The LM432.
Yeah, I don't think we've really talked much about them on this cast.
No, I don't think so either. I can't really enlarge their unit card here.
I
I
mean,
think the relevant thing is scouting party one, right?
yes, yeah, they're broadly kind of similar to spiders. They don't have quite the same array of armaments available, but it's a support unit that has a gun on it, and that's kind of what it does. Uh,
Yeah.
they don't have as high of an armor value, but they have a red save, which of course you can make a surging red save via aggressive tactics and or bolster
And exemplar.
and exemplar. Um, they have a program slot for defense protocols or something else, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. They're pretty good. But the fact that they have scout and scouting party. I mean, this is the first non-unique unit with scouting party.
Yes. And I don't want to like go as far as be like crab droids are gonna break the game, but I do feel fairly confident. I don't think they're gonna break the game. But I do think that they're gonna be just 3X's in every separatist list when they come out.
Yeah, I mean, scout is a keyword that separatists have trouble accessing,
Yeah. And
and this gives it to them in a way that's super flexible. And the unit itself is pretty good. So yeah, I'm comfortable putting these guys in A tier.
yeah, I think so too. I think they're definitely A tier, probably a little better than the Rebel ATRT at a minimum.
Yeah.
I could definitely see them being S tier depending on how good scouting party ends up being in separatists. Like we're talking about like situations where you can start scouting partying like Count Dooku.
Right.
Like I'm not gonna discount the fact that like all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I've got Dooku, Asajj, and Grievous, and they all have scout now, right?
Not
Like,
not Grievous. But yeah.
well, sure, I'm just
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
and Maul's infiltrating,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I'm not saying that list is good. I'm just saying that like
It's a thing you could do.
that's a thing that you can do and that is not really been done before, right?
Yeah, I will say, I mean, we'll see how much of a difference this makes as far as scouting party's value is concerned. But I'd say it's basically required when you take Wicket or Rex that you increase their scout value to 2 via
Yes,
recon
that's
intel
that's
or
fair.
forest dwellers, and these guys don't have a way to do that. So this is going to always just be scouting party with scout 1. Now, don't get me wrong, 4 inches is
Better than
still way
0.
better than 0.
Yeah.
But it's not 6, and we're used to evaluating the utility of scouting party off of essentially a 6-inch move always because nobody.
Has had it for less. Yeah.
Right. So we'll see. I think the fact that this is, even if they didn't have scout and scouting party on their card, they'd be a pretty reasonable comparable to the spiders, who are pretty good. And then they also have that. I mean, I think it's going to be a good unit, but
Yeah.
I do think it's worth calling out that this scouting party is not quite as good as what we're used to with Rex and Wicket.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, let's talk about the spider droids since you brought them up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest, I haven't seen a lot of spider droids. I suspect that they're probably really good though.
Yeah, I haven't personally used or seen them either, but all of their kit kind of lends itself to what you want to be doing in 2.6.
Yeah.
I
Is
mean,
self-destruct the only it's one of the very few AoE attacks that are left in the game, right?
besides Bosk and Sabine, yes.
And like
And
I guess
IG
there's a couple
11.
like spin attacks with like Grievous
Yeah.
and yeah. But yeah, I mean it's definitely maybe the only one that's left on a unit that you can't take multiples of or can take multiples of.
The only non-unique one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how much you want to bank on it, but it's one of those situations where like if you can get one off with as close together as everything is now.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. It's
mean,
like your whole army takes 3 red dice to each unit.
yeah.
And the flamethrower honestly is still pretty good. I mean it's the Dewback flamethrower, right?
No, it's red white.
Oh, because the Dewback's black white.
Yeah, it's actually better
Yeah,
than the
yeah, yeah.
Dewback flamethrower.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. They're pretty good. And you can also just take like the ion version and just use them. You know, back when spider droids first came out, they were super good because they had a reliable range 4 pool.
Yeah.
But in order to make that work, you had, because of how AI works and because the weapon had exhaust on it, you basically had to like babysit them with Kalani and give them a face up every turn. And you'd have to be getting aim tokens from link targeting array and then recover shooting with them, basically. That's like a lot of extra points. And that was still worth it.
Yes. Yeah.
Now the ion does not have exhaust on it, and they can just kind of ignore AI. So they can take that same ion profile and just aim shoot every turn without having to pay extra for link targeting array, without having to babysit them with a super tactical droid, and without having to give them orders. So
Notably, I do think you kind of have to like spend some time getting them in position that you didn't used to really have to do.
you do, yeah.
Uh,
So there's that. But you can probably do that like on the first turn, right? You just move them once and then they're where they need to be.
yeah.
And then they still have the flexibility because it's speed 2 with a reasonably big sized base. They can still probably get to like a middle-ish point later in the game if they need to.
I think that's fair.
So yeah, I think they're a little bit unexplored with the Ion since it lost exhaust and since AI changed.
I agree. Are we putting it in A tier with the crab droid, or are we like
I'd put
shotgun
it I'd put it below the ATRT, but I'd put it in A tier.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Droidecus.
Ugh.
I mean,
Another unit that I love.
they're 60 points now. I actually, again, I think that they might be kind of reasonable.
60 points is really cheap.
Shielded also goes like a long way in making the new cover system feel not as bad for you.
Yes, although it's worth considering that because of their size, it was very common for them to get cover previously, and now they're just not allowed to.
That's fair.
So, yes, shielded helps, but you're basically trading cover 2 for nothing on them most of the time.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I think they're actually less durable than they were previously. But as you said, 60 points is ridiculously cheap.
Yeah, we're in ATRT, Rebel ATRT territory here, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure that this is anywhere near as good as its crab and spider cousins.
Yeah, it's not up there with them, but they're a useful unit. I'd put them at like B minus.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna skip these swoop bike riders, because we've already talked about them.
Yep.
Let's get to the thick of it. The Radoff NASP Fluttercraft. Is that how you say that technically? I don't know.
Does Republic have the most support units in the game?
Um,
I mean, it's 6. That's got to be the most, right?
yeah, I think so. It definitely was a lot when I was looking at it on Tabletop Admiral. I was like, it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like this. Let's be real. They only have one, but yeah.
They only have one that you're currently taking.
Yeah.
That doesn't make the rest of these bad necessarily. Just
No,
not as good.
There are 2 versions of the Fluttercraft. I think that they're close enough that we can probably talk about them as the same unit.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know.
They're definitely not as bad as other speeders.
Yes, that I will agree with. They come in at 55 points, which I think is cheap enough, and like even with upgrades, they're like 75. They don't deteriorate in like weaponry because there's only one of them as opposed to 2, which is significant.
Yep. They have native cover 2.
Native cover 2. They've got the built-in reposition for the speeder bikes, which is relevant because speeders lose the free reposition on the first action before you move. As
Yeah,
opposed
they don't
as
get that
opposed
benefit.
yeah, but the Fluttercraft do. So these guys can definitely be anywhere you want them to be. And they still get cover 2.
Yeah, and they're immune melee blast range 1.
Yeah.
They're definitely better than the other speeder bikes.
Yeah, they're fine. I think they definitely like they still die.
Yeah.
I think they're probably also, but just like relatively here, I do think they're better than Tauntauns and laser cannons.
Yeah, I think if we're gonna do C, you got to put them at like C plus, top of
Yeah.
C. Yeah.
Do you think they're good enough to be in the B tier?
Man, it's so hard to remove them from the context of their faction.
They would be great, I think, in any other faction.
Well, and also
or
because
specifically like Rebels.
Yeah.
I mean, in faction context, I suspect they might be D tier. Like this might be the worst of the 6.
Barks aren't. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that, but in that
we
light,
we put swoops at B.
Yeah, I'd say C plus.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay.
Because you do have to consider faction context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Clone Commandos and Clone Commandos Delta Squad, which are definitely 2 different units.
Yeah. So I mean, let's just put Clone Commandos in S. We don't like do we need to.
Yeah, they're S plus.
Unless this is the first time you listen to this show ever,
or played Legion,
or played Legion.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to explain that ranking.
Yep. They are silly busted. I feel differently about Delta Squad. I think Delta so this is also kind of why I feel a little weird about like talking about like Clone Commando points increases, because I don't think Delta Squad's anywhere close to worth it at 100 points. And they have like some significant upgrades over Clone Commandos, but I don't think it's anywhere near enough to warrant. I don't know.
Now, is that because you have to compare them directly to the 25 points cheaper Clone Commandos?
No, I don't. I think when you're looking at like just how they function as a unit and how they scale in terms of their points cost, like they definitely do not throw enough dice for a unit that costs 100 points, right? Like when you're paying 100 points for a unit, like you're expecting that unit to like, start getting into the threat range of like outright killing things.
Yeah,
like in one attack, right?
Yep.
And Delta doesn't do that unless they get to 2. And if you lose one model, Delta really sucks. Like they're really bad
For their cost, yeah.
for their cost, right? Um, I don't think it's a bad unit, but it's like a solid B, probably a B plus to me, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. I think for me, it's hard in my head to remove them from the context of like, why wouldn't you just take Clone Commandos?
Sure.
So I struggle to rank them objectively,
I do think
but
like
yeah,
if you're in a Republic list and you like finish off your list with your like 3X Commandos and you're like sitting at like 970 points, like this is a reasonable thing to spend your extra 30-point wiggle room on if you
sure.
want. I think there are better things to spend that on, but because of how Republic units tend to be, I guess they're not that expensive these days, but they tend to have like more expensive units, so you tend to end up with some wiggle room there. Yeah, they're definitely the best thing to be,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't think they're anything more than average. Bark speeder bike.
Ah, man. These things are really slow when you put a gun on them.
I don't think you put a gun on. I don't know why you would. I think these are
Sure.
65-point unit. I think these are still fine at 65. And I think naked speeder bikes is the way to go.
Yeah, and yeah, that's fair. I'm just a little sad that that gun upgrade is useless. I
It
don't know how
was
to say
it
useless,
it
but
was useless before the refresh though.
sure.
Like we've been running naked speeder bikes for the last like 3 years already, right?
Yeah.
And
They definitely feel less bad with the edition update than the other speeder bikes because this is just kind of how you always use them anyway.
yeah. And like 5 red health on a speeder bike is actually still like they're still relevant.
Yep, I agree.
Um I think these guys are low A, high B,
Would you put them above or below Delta?
above.
Okay.
And just for the sake of like, I would rather for almost the same points as Delta, I can almost have 2 of these.
Yeah.
Um, and that's just yeah. 10 health versus 4 is like
It's a big difference.
significant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Republic ATRT. This is something I haven't really screwed around with yet.
Yeah, I feel like this is so unexplored simply because Commandos exist in the same slot
Yeah.
and a
That
similar price point.
similar price point, and like they unlike the Rebel one, they have a gun at range 3 like on their unit card that is like it's not a good gun, but it is a gun.
Yeah, it's
And
not
there's
terrible.
6 red health for 60 points. It's like behind armor 2 is a lot.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it seems like in theory, they should be about as good as the Rebel one.
Yeah, I agree. I'm willing to throw them up in A tier.
Okay.
I haven't played around with them, but I definitely think they're definitely better than the support units that aren't clone commandos.
Yeah, I feel like if Commandos get nerfed into the ground, I could see as a Republic player maybe just wholesale replacing that slot slash role with ATRTs.
Yeah, I also think we haven't really talked much about this, but I do think Republic vehicles in general suffer a lot less from the than they do in the old edition because like you can afford to take things that don't have the clone trooper keyword these days.
Yeah.
We haven't really seen that because most of the things that don't have the clone trooper keyword are in the support slot. Uh,
Yes.
so clone commandos are here, you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that every faction has a representation in the A tier here.
I'm willing to say that I think that despite the Clone Commando outlier, uh the support um the support slot I think is perhaps the most honest, like reasonably honest, like fair slot in the game, I think.
Other than the travesty that is speeder bikes, I agree with you.
Sure. That's fair. Like if you're looking for a unit that's like pretty solid, not busted, but also like not bad, like this is not a bad place to just like take things, and they're fine most of the time.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the least controversial slot,
Yes.
excluding Clone Commandos.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, let's be real, shouldn't be support units at all.
Yes,
But here we are.
here we are, and now you can. I mean, you can take them alongside arcs, so because they are.
It's funny. Clone Commandos should just be like, they should have the special forces rank, but just have like a keyword that's like, you could treat this unit as a support instead. uh,
Yeah, for list building purposes only.
yeah.
That'd be nice for your token mix.
It would be. It would be. Not that they need to be
That'd be a
any
buff to
better.
them.
Yeah. Um, but
All right.
so, what tier list are we going to go over next time, Kyle?
I don't know.
And is it going to be just dominated by a stupid S tier Republic unit?
Yeah, so far we've done Force users,
Yeah,
which Anakin was at the top of. We've done special forces, which arcs were at the top of, and we've done support, which Clone Commandos were at the top of. I don't know. What tier list would people like to see if we're going to do a tier list next week?
that's a great
You know,
question.
let us know in the comments what you want to see. It doesn't have to be like a rank one
Yeah,
either necessarily. I mean, we already did a force user one, so I don't know. Let us know. Let us know what tier list you would like to see.
for sure.
So anyway, we are the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
And Mike.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.